All right, well, thanks for having me here today. My name is Jay Brewer. I'm the Vice President of Experience Design at Rapid7, and also my Product Adoption Manager, which is a new title for us at Rapid7, is Travis Turney is here to talk with us also later in the presentation. Today we're really going to be talking about how you can get some return on investment, not just for Pendo, but like for all those efforts that you put in your different design work. And really, how do you measure that success with your customers overall? So I am going to go through a little bit about Rapid7. We're a cybersecurity company, so it can be a little confusing if I go through the examples of all the ways that we use Pendo to change the designs if you don't actually know what you're looking at. Also, we'll talk a little bit about our philosophy and UX at Rapid7 to give you an idea of how the Pendo and all the insights and data that we collect from it weave through our process of product development. And then we're going to be talking about this product called Insight IDR. It's a security data product that basically finds bad people on your network, finds bad people doing things on your phone. It's a behavioral analytics product with a lot of data to drive it. So we're going to show you what that context is. And then take you through three big reasons we use Pendo for return on investment in UX and product development. And then Travis is going to come up and talk about the Product Engagement Index. He'll talk to you about what that is a little bit later on. And then we'll do a wrap-up and questions. All right, so let's get started. So like I said, Rapid7 is a security and data analytics company. What we do is we gather a lot of data about your network and your devices your company are using. We look at what applications are running on that different stuff. And in the end, our goal is that we would like to keep companies' assets secure, right? So we have to get them to onboard and use our products and know that in the end, we'll have their credit cards or other confidential information safe. However, I will tell you, as you saw earlier, security products are really, really frustrating to use. There was a couple of slides in one of the presentation where it showed those old software as a service, or not even that enterprise software. And we also at Rapid7 suffer from this problem. And then that's why we have a pretty large UX team to basically move on and make much more delightful experiences. And in order to get here, we have to know what our customers are doing. So since we have a lot of data, we have a lot of data visualization issues where we have to communicate to our customers what's important and what's not important. And we have to also, since we have a variety of products, make that experience work across a wide range of different activities that security people are doing. So this is where I get to our Rapid7 UX approach. When I first got to Rapid7 a couple years ago, excuse me, they had basically a UX team that was making things look nice with some qualitative research and info. And what that looked like was, it was mostly based around actions. So above the iceberg is our methodology of thinking that, hey, this is what the customer sees, engineering builds some stuff, and our core team works on the information design, trying to solve these different information problems. What we realize is that in order to really get at what our practitioners and security need to do, we needed to add research. The idea of growing them through these different learning plateaus, I think Adam's presentation this morning was perfect. It's like, Optimizely is got all these things that you can do. Well, they might only do one thing, but then they don't find all this other value in the product, and how do you push them along? And then this notion of documentation. So in enterprise software, documentation tends to be very large and verbose and in PDFs and whatever. And we're like, we need to bring all that closer to the customer and really get them below the iceberg. So in order to really drive the UX team and our engineering efforts, we needed to get all this data about our customers and what they really wanted to learn to the team building all that stuff on the front end. I'm sure that you get, just like the previous presentation that was in here, he was talking about all these different ways that you got to prioritize that product backlog. Well, we really wanted to drive this with all that learning, research, and documentation. So we had to modernize our approach. And when we started looking around at different items, we acquired a company called Log Entries in the fall of 2015. And they were using Pendo to basically do a lot of these like checkout features, like some of the polling stuff. And we're like, hey, that's really interesting. I didn't know that this even exists. We had looked at other products. In my previous life, I actually was in online gaming, massive multiplayer gaming, and we built our own solution using Splunk, which cost us like $250,000 every 3 months to keep this thing running for millions of customers. And I'm like, well, we can't afford that here. I'd like to afford it, but how could we do that? So what we ended up doing is looking at Pendo and saying like, wow, there's two main areas that we could focus on that would really drive the product organization forward. And that's really this notion of hands-on, moving through plateaus, fuller understanding of our products. Like you're using this dashboard, hey, maybe you also want to use this other part of our product. And really this idea of the self-service learning. So we wanted to basically, once we started to learn about them and what they were doing in the product, be able to provide them opportunities and experiences to grow as a customer. This is really the Pendo promise, right? Like that's the thing. I mean, it's amazing how aligned we were, and I've seen other people to really wanting to drive this idea of these two main areas with our products. So this is our timeline of Pendo integration. So today's presentation, I'm going to talk about a redesign of Insight IDR from an old version to a new version. And as we acquired this company in 2015, we had to basically get out a merging of that technology together in a short few months. And we didn't want to lose a lot of the great things that we had going for us in the old product, or we thought we had going for us in the old product, and really kind of track it forward. But we were able to track the old version of the product and then integrate and track migrations of the new product as we kind of started to complete this redesign. And most of the stuff we're going to talk about today is in here, and then moving into the later part of the year. Then we were able to integrate it into some of our other products in the middle of the year, and then starting to develop, which Travis will talk about, quickly these product engagement index to drive customer success in other parts of the organization. And then we started doing these call downs in Q4. We started to learn about the customers, who was really active and who wasn't inactive, to basically drive revenue. And we were able to close lots of money in business because we knew that people weren't really using the product very well. And then also, we were able to, starting this year, integrate it into 5 more products. So we started with 1 product, and now we have literally 7. This would have taken forever in my old world of gaming, and now you can do this pretty quickly. And I think everybody's had some of the, how many people here have worked on getting the tag integrated and getting up and running? Yeah, it's pretty quick, right? I mean, it's impressive. So I'm going to give a security data design example for you to understand the context of the product, and then we'll go through a walkthrough of what Insight IDR does. So in security, if you start collecting web logs and events, at Rapid7 alone every day, we collect over 100 million events of security data, right? And it's not just a click event or a page event. It's like this guy logged in on this server with this IP address, and it has like 25 different pieces of data associated with it. So in order for me to figure out that it's actually Travis and not you logging on the network, it's pretty difficult. And when our security practitioners look at this data, they kind of see a picture that's not so painted in. You can kind of make out maybe a little bit of the town and these clouds or something. And a lot of security products basically tell you that that thing in the foreground is a tree, and it looks really green, and it's growing, and it's really good. But in the end, it's actually on fire. And if you actually start to look really deeper, you're in problem. You know, all your credit cards have been stolen. It's not good. All right. So Insight IDR, the idea of it is that you can enrich that experience. So instead of finding a tree, you're actually going to find that burning bush right away. This is the product. It has, some navigation, classic Chrome, with some key areas of the product, which I'll talk about, and then these KPI indicators of things that we think are really important to practitioners. This is the new design. And then it has this key area where if you get an alert or an investigation, you get brought into a timeline. And I'm going to tell you, this is complicated already, right? So like without Pendo and being able to do this, even with a great design, it's pretty challenging. So you get this dashboard and you come in, And then we click into an event, and you can see that in this event alone, there's firewall data. And does everybody know what a firewall is? That's the stuff that keeps all that bad traffic out. In security, you have both offensive and defensive capabilities. And this is basically around these, an ingress has happened. And this woman, Martha Green, who's always causing trouble at Rapid7, Martha Green has access to this computer, which actually was a honeypot. It was a fake asset. So we put these traps out there to basically capture bad guys, like you'd put a bear trap out for a bear. And all of a sudden you're like, why would the bear ever go over there and click on that? Well, no one knows about that trap. And so we know that that's not a real person who knows about that server, because no one should know about that honeypot. Now this looks good, so we're like, hey, we should probably just go get Martha Green's machine and shut her down. But at Rapid7, and why this would be just basically the tree analogy, if we don't actually add a lot more data to what our security practitioners would see, what they would do to catch the bad guy, if we don't add this endpoint data, the network data, and the raw logs data, essentially, we wouldn't find all these other issues around it. So like I said, the data is not simple, it's multifaceted. So each of those data points has 5, 6, 10, 15 different things that you could look at. So our products do that. They look at all that. We add that data into this timeline. And now we can see that it's not just Martha Green, though she's pretty bad. She's actually infected all of her friends, and all this other stuff is going on. And then the malware is actually spreading on these 2 different locations. What that allows us to do is really provide that full picture for a security person and show you that like this one event is actually tied to a larger breach or a larger issue going on in their network. All right, so that's security. So now we can all take a break. Everyone is stand and stretch. So that's the kind of thing that these security people deal with every day. It's very complicated. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of different tools. And one of the big reasons that we wanted to use Pendo was we really had to reduce the engineering costs on being able to guide our practitioners through these experiences. So if you looked in the Optimizely example from this morning, like, hey, it's complicated. Some of it is going to be complicated and harder to use. So how do we take them through? We still know that we really want to design for great experiences, but they do want to learn about the product in the different areas. The other reason is we wanted to use Pendo to make the right investments in the future. How do we pick from the old product to the new product, to new features we want to do, to show my boss, Lee Weiner, who's the chief product officer, like, hey, by the way, these 35 people on the UX team, we're actually making you money, and we can show that the product's actually stickier than it was before. And then we want to measure those redesigns and show improvement over time. So one of the key things, it's like, well, you go to an engineering meeting and they're like, well, why do you want to redesign that? Well, I would really like to do it because I think it's going to make everybody be able to close investigations faster. Well, how do you measure it? So our first thing that we did is to reduce the engineering cost. We had an in-house, homegrown messaging system, almost like that JavaScript example from this morning. It took us on the order of 2 to 3 weeks to put out a release and a bunch of stuff in there, and we're like, oh my gosh, we've got to reduce this time. And when we looked at integrating this messaging across all those 7 products I showed you earlier, the engineering team came back and said, hey, it's going to take like 4 to 5 months to build that out, and then who's going to maintain it? And we're like, well, we need a solution that is not going to do that. And Pendo really allowed us to get that estimate and then say like, well, how much would that have cost, that 4 to 5 months of engineering time to do this, right? To make these wonderful first-time user experience messages, to showcase new features. And so it was easy for us to say like, well, Pendo isn't going to cost $250,000. It's going to cost X amount of dollars. I can't disclose our amount, but much, much less. Yeah, and so essentially, this was our first reason. It's one of those 2 big pillars for us and why we wanted to integrate Pendo. And I think this is one of the key things. It's like your teams can maintain this. It doesn't require engineering. It allows you to update it. It allows other people in the company to message into it. So we were able to also showcase what we were doing, and like marketing was like, oh, we have a conference coming up. Could we talk to our customers and the products for the first time? Yes, you can. And this is really great. And And then the other key thing was that it's really like very low engineering required for usage tracking. So it would take us, I don't know, 3, 4, 6 weeks of time. We had this classic Splunk or something database that was basically tracking all these tags that the engineers, we'd beg them to put into the pages to tell us how many people clicked on this thing. And by the way, how many investigations did they have open when they were looking at that credit card data that was stolen? That's not a priority for me right now, so I'd love to get you that answer, but like whatever. We were able to, within a few days after getting it integrated, like set it up, tag all the pages in the application, ask an engineer to fix a few really bad style names. And this was like, we were able to tag over 300% more with Pendo than we had before. We had no idea what they were doing across the application. And I think this is another key thing, especially when you're trying to get Pendo into your company. Just these two things alone. I will be able to do this myself, and I'll be able to learn more about our customers. And it doesn't cost me an engineer's time for 5 sprints. And I don't know how many people are in that world, but I talk to a lot of people. And this allowed Travis and I, when we first started, to really figure out that we had these 2 main profiles in a few days. That we had these customers that came from alerts and they clicked on a bunch of the different dashboards and they left it up. And these other more fuller use product customers that had gotten better hand-holding, better demonstration. And so we were like, wow, this whole self-service learning thing seems like we could get everybody who's basically doing this sort of looking at the dashboard into this fuller use. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So, this gets me back to like how you want to figure out those right investments, right? Like how you want to tag those features, how you want to focus on what are the features that are going to drive the most bang for your buck. And really, how do you augment user testing? You can meet with 1 million customers, but you can't scale. I mean, we have, I'll just say, like we have 16,000 customers on one of our products. Like how do you go and meet with a representative pool of them to understand the overall behavior? And how do you tell them about these new features? Well, Pendo is a really great way to do this. And it allows you to really, like one of my key principles is like you don't want to lose the good, right? We all design products. I lead a large team of designers and product management and engineering. And though we're going to design a new product, the biggest thing is like you can actually sunset a lot of stuff that you think was not being used if you're not measuring it. In our old design, and this is a beauty right here, you might not think it looks that bad, but it was pretty unusable. We had these key areas that we identified in Pendo as not even above the fold, but like we had customers that came in, just looked at like their CEO on the network. They just tracked risky users. The other people like loved this map. People love maps in security. They love looking at who's logging in where, all over the world, who's trying to nuke each other from different countries. It's awesome. And then they loved this idea of this KPI, which is tell me the things that matter. Bubble up information to me that's important. So, and we didn't outline this here, but this area here, which is cloud services, we found out that security people love to shut down cloud services, right? Because like, if you're using Dropbox and Dropbox isn't allowed, I can go find you on our network and say you can't use Dropbox anymore. And we had no idea that was one of the big delighters in the product. Because, right, as an IT admin, they're like, you can't use Box. Like, you only have to use Google Drive and all these other ones. So that was good. So in the new design, we were able to bring it forward and really punch up the key areas of information and bring your risky users, really kind of bring the map up, add more KPIs that added more value. And the cool thing is we were able to show that like when we did this, if you look at the heat map, we maintained that activity and actually enhanced a lot of that activity. How many people know you can do heat maps in Pendo? Quite a few people. That's good. I didn't know this when we first got it, and then I was like, wow, like I thought we were going to have to use like some other tracking. We used to do a lot of eye tracking in games, and I was like, this is awesome. And we also learned that like as successful as the indicators were, a lot of the indicators they didn't matter then. So we were able to deprecate a lot of this, and some of that work is actually in play right now. And that allowed us to really focus on the fact that we had done and could show and measure that in the old product, the usage was not distributed across the product. And one of the selling points of the design was to say, hey, if you let us do this information design and we learn about our customers, we're going to get more page views, more stickiness. We're going to get a fuller use of the product. And the reason why in security you want people to use more of your product is because they're going to be more secure. Like if they just set up parts of the security application and they don't block firewall data or honeypot data, then we basically have a very unhappy, insecure customer with very little visibility into how big their attack surface is, how much they're going to get attacked. And this gets me to the third where I have a majority of the stuff to show. How do you measure improvement on those redesigns, and how do you show as an ongoing basis how much value you're doing? So this is one of the things that, well, great, how is that particular feature doing after you guys spent like 16 weeks on it? So what I like to call this example is how do you show the move? And it's all about up and to the right for financial data, and it is also for activity around key features in your product. So you want, has anybody seen the feature plot diagrams in Pendo where it's all like scatter plotted out, right? I'm going to show a little bit of that. Well, if you have a key feature, like let's say that you were a teddy bear designer, okay, and you gave it to a bunch of kids, you said, this is a great teddy bear, and the kid's just like, oh, I'm just going to go play with my other toy. Then that fuller use of teddy bearness, right, isn't very good. You want the kid to love that teddy bear because that's the key part of the product that they're trying to get, that's lovable and huggable and adoptable. So, our team, before we had Pendo, would do an analysis like this. This is actually looking through the giant suite of pages that we had in the older product, trying to figure out all the different commonalities of the design. This is great. It's a great way to whiteboard and have a lot of fun, but it takes a lot of time, wastes a lot of trees, and also doesn't allow your team to scale very, very well. So when we looked at the old product, we found, after tagging it in Pendo, quickly that we had these 4 areas, which actually could be 2 areas. And that's actually, this is initially what the team was doing. And then we got Pendo, and I said, by the way, guys, I agree with you. We need to collapse all this traffic into a consolidated experience that's much better. So that experience I showed you earlier where we added the data to the timeline and did all that, that used to be like, I don't know, 45 clicks or something. It was crazy. And this also allowed us to really drive and double the amount of visitors into this feature as it's the core feature of the product. So I could say, like, if I'm building a product that's about search or about investigations, how do I look through the data in Pendo and find where all these disparate areas of activity are and pull that together into one area? Pendo really allows you to do this quite well, as long as you tag all those features and pages. So this old design, like I showed you, had all this data spread out all over. And these are 4 or 5 different pages. And the new design, we put it all into one view, a very denser view where people could enrich and add it. And we drove that traffic up 3 times. And we really tried to funnel all the traffic of the application much more into this single, they call it in security, a single pane of glass. But it's the promise of really of getting more activity in an area and getting a full picture. And so this is the up and to the right moment. In the old design, that investigations feature was used by very few practitioners. It was very complicated, very, very difficult to use. But now in Inside IDR, we've moved it way up in here. It's the most used area. People are delighted about it. We get good feedback about it. Our salespeople are able to say, like, thanks for doing this, because when I call my people on the phone, the promise of the product that it's an investigation tool is being delivered. And then without Pendo, getting to this answer to get to here would have taken us like a long, long time. So like being able to really utilize the team, look at the data, and move that is a key feature. And that gets me to Travis Turney, who's going to tell you about how we've also extended this out to the rest of the company and the product engagement index. So thank you.
All right.
I'm in the way.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Travis.
Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for the chance to speak with you today. So wanted to give you just very brief background of mine. I previously was a product manager working on Inside IDR for the last couple of years. And then when we deployed Pendo, moved into this new role full-time, looking at Pendo and other tools to see how can we focus and grow our product's usage. So today, we have several products, right? We've got 7 products that we sell, different families, different customers, different personas, all sorts of different uses. So how do we know how people are doing well, and how can we know where to improve? Not only kind of absolute usage, but relative usage, right? Where do customers fall in the stack of, are they engaged? Are they doing what we think they ought to do? And how does that change over time? So we'll talk about that a little bit today. So we have several products. Earlier, Jay mentioned Inside IDR. We also have a product called Nexpose. So we have a set of essentially report cards for each of these products to let us know how things are going. And not only kind of looking at that as a snapshot in time, but see what those trends are, right? Because the snapshot, useful. Trends are a lot more useful. So how does the product engagement index work? We start with Pendo, right? We start with things that users do. How often are they in the product? What pages do they go to? What features do they use? What's the frequency? Are they not logging in? What are the things that they're doing? And come up with a model that really kind of shows us what that looks like on a relative scale. Essentially a stack rank, right? We see most active customers, least active customers, then we put them into groups. So here's an example of kind of what that report could look like. At the top here, we've got 100%, and this would represent kind of our top quintile for a particular segment of a product. Then we've got a bunch of other different areas that we look at, and then we have kind of these, general Pendo stats, and then some specific pages that represent kind of the killer app for this particular product. In this case, investigations, log search, and dashboards. Log search happens to be that product that we acquired back in 2015, and really represents kind of a key area, right? We wouldn't have acquired if we did, and it was really allowed us to kind of change the way that people use the product and the way that people use investigations. So what, right? If you are someone who's not using Pendo outside of products, what does this really mean to you? So we tried to simplify this in a way that we can communicate it to anyone across the company. And we put customers basically into 5 different buckets. So here on one end, we've got our engaged customers, very happy, disengaged, unhappy. And right now, this is largely based on activity. So like for any product, right, we're making some assumptions here. In most cases, more use could mean happier. It could also mean frustration if it's not designed properly. So this is one part of it. We'll talk about some of the other parts as well. But different audiences care about different parts of these groups here. So for example, disengaged customers. Customer success wants to know about these folks. They don't only want to know about them, they want to know about them early, usually before you told them. That's my experience. But also, they want to know about them in context. I want to know about the engaged customers that are up for renewal this quarter, this month. So we create some reports to help them see that. But for engaged customers, it's a different audience, right? It's product management. They want to know who should be and who should try out this new feature, this new beta. Marketing cares about these folks. I want advocates. I want people that use your product, that like your product, and want to tell other people, right? So we have different audiences for each of these. We also look at things like the mean and median to get an idea to say, not at the customer level, but at the product level. Are people really happy with this? Are they using it? And then we can also look at that at different life cycles. Like if I'm launching a product, the first 90 days is going to be different than the second year and how that should change. So here's an example of how this might look over time. Maybe we see a customer or product that's in this area. We release a new set of features, or maybe remove a set of features to make the experience better. And we can kind of see how that moved over time. And that's really important to be able to see those trends over time. So who uses this? So here's an example of an early iteration of the product engagement index that we would build in Excel and share generally with probably up to products leadership, and that was about it. On the right-hand side, you see a chart kind of showing the proportion of each of these different groups, from power users all the way down to, on the left-hand side, we've got kind of the guts of the model here, looking at things like the mean and the median and standard deviation, right? How average is important, but what's that spread of data look like? Is average representative? Is it way off? And then we look at kind of the specific groups and buckets. But basically what you need to know here, right, you've got different items that are important to you. A lot of these features and kind of critical criteria or product goals are going to come from product managers. And they're going to be able to help you kind of identify what are the things that are important to you. So outside of Excel, we took a stab at kind of what this might look like in a product that customer success uses, like Salesforce. So we've got kind of some data in here, not only the product engagement index, but also some examples of content directly from Pendo. Just kind of a thought of kind of what this might look like to folks that aren't necessarily going to log into Pendo. There are folks throughout your organization that are really going to want to use this data that lives in Pendo, but they're probably not going to log in. So you want to bring that to them to the tools where they live, whether that's Salesforce or other tools. So here's an example here of Domo. How many people here are familiar with Domo? Anyone? A couple. So it's a relatively new tool. It's basically what you need to know. It's a business intelligence tool. And for folks that have kind of been using Excel for everything, it does a lot of stuff that Excel does, but puts it in a SaaS solution. So we use it a lot for reporting about sales and marketing. And other areas too. We're just starting to incorporate Pendo data into Domo as well. So here we've got an example of a customer engagement index for Inside IDR. We've got a list of customers. We've got kind of their relative score and some of the stats that go on this. So the really neat thing about this is we're using the Pendo API to pull that data in basically on a nightly basis and pipe it into a tool that a much broader segment of the organization uses. They're very comfortable using it. They log into it every day. Why not bring that data to them where they live? So what is this all building up to? We talked about engagement, kind of quantifying what users are doing, but you don't want to be myopic about that. You want to be able to look at this in context of other qualitative data. And that really brings us to our overall customer health score. So our major initiative for 2017 is to establish customer health scores across all 7 products on the platform here. On the top left, still the key part of this is kind of Pendo-style data, but also looking at things that Pendo doesn't have access to. So for example, when we're looking at things like onboarding, a customer might be successful if they've deployed a certain number of endpoint agents. They're monitoring 5 or more types of data sources, and they've got at least 4 or 5 different types of roles of people that have logged in, from admin to perhaps they're only a read-only user or other types. We want to be able to capture that as well as things like data volume. Also including NPS. So currently, admittedly, we capture NPS through email. Going forward, we'll be able to grab that through Pendo. And then finally, qualitative feedback from the CSM team, right? And that could consist of, how responsive is this customer when I try to reach out to them? If I call them, do they pick up? If I send them an email, do they respond? And use all of that together to give an overall customer health score. So the idea here is you're looking at not only what they do, but how they feel and kind of how your internal teams feel about them as well, and really using Pendo to power all of that. So takeaways. So definitely, we want to focus on reducing engineering costs. As you scale, you have to be fast, right? If you have to update some copy, it can't take 6 weeks to do it. Making sure that you're making the right investments in the future, not only at the product level, but across your portfolio as well. You want to be able to measure the improvements on redesigns and show that return, so that as your teams grow, you're showing that investment grows as well, or ideally faster. And finally, having some sort of relative way to measure the success at the product level and at the customer level. With that, I think we have some time for questions.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. All right.
Sure.
So it's interesting, this the customer health score and everything. So what input from the customer success managers do you use as a metric?
So it's a rating from 1 to 5. And basically, this is the responsiveness of that customer, right? Is this customer, and you could probably couch it as, is this customer easy to work with or not? So 1, very easy to work with, 5, not so much.
Yeah.
Is there a formula that you use inside of Domo or Excel or whatever that provides the overall computation of the score?
So that particular element actually lives in Salesforce. And it's an input that the CSM can change over time.
The important thing with the CSM being able to kind of give enrichment to the score is that they may have a product in our world where they don't use search and a bunch of the other features because they have other tools, and the CSM knows that. So they're like, well, they're kind of relatively inactive, but I actually give them a high score, and that we take that relative weighting of the customer success manager very, very high in the calculation, only because they're going to know their customer best if they're in touch with them and they're very responsive.
Right.
Yep.
Given the sheer surface area that you guys have to accommodate in your platform, did you go about tailoring the product engagement index to different personas? Like, how did you develop that, or is it more unilateral?
Yeah.
Not yet, but it's something, it's a good point, because engagement does vary by persona, right? Now that we're also serving different market segments, so different personas from the sense of a person who focuses 100% on security to a person who's kind of more IT operations, and then some crossover. So, how do we design for both of those? And that's really kind of a focus for us this year.
Yeah.
So today it's kind of uniform. In the future, we'll see that vary by persona.
And that's kind of some of the activity I showed you earlier, like not only in an unsuccessful design where you see different types of behavior you want to correct, but we're actually starting to build profiles of practitioners and how they use the product to know that, like, oh yeah, this is a person who does respond to breaches. This is actually a person who's a dashboarding customer, and they're actually very healthy, very happy with the product, and we're kind of building in those activity personas. But at a high level, we target the products towards a persona, just like I'm sure a lot of other people do in the room.
I'll stay with the product engagement index, that's fascinating. But how did you have equal weights on each of those factors in those columns?
So there are different weights. So the Pendo elements, like days logged in, those are all basically weighted by 1. And this, it could vary completely. It's part of this is kind of like working with product management to see, like, how important is this to you, right? So one of the things we wanted to do is reward for using features that might not be as popular, but we think they're kind of representative of kind of like a power user. So for example, like investigations, log search, and dashboards. Those are rated 2x, 3x, and 4x, because we think that people that are using those dashboards, because not only are they setting them up, they're going back and looking at them on a regular basis. So we really want to identify those folks and reward for that activity.
Yeah, and I think that's knowing your customer. You've heard that today. Like, if you can do this, but if you don't really kind of add a little bit of your understanding of the customer and follow up with some of that qualitative stuff, then you won't. When we started that index and we started with the health score, we picked like 25 features, and we were trying to like be really sophisticated, and we're like, look, we just got to keep it simple.
Right.
Like, start with the base, and then add a couple of key things, and that's more than enough. I mean, that 14% at risk or whatever that number was, that was a big help for our customer success team in Q4. And then, another thing we didn't ever think about was like, well, maybe the person left the company and no one's using it because no one knows about it.
Right.
So we ended up mirroring all this data about all these people who were paying us. Basically, they didn't even know they had the product. And all of a sudden we told them, and they're like, oh my gosh, I thought this was gone when Joe left, And we're like, so we were able to make them really, really happy. So.
Right, and not having early warning systems about that type of stuff, I mean, what's the likelihood of those folks to renew if they haven't logged in 6 months? Not good.
Yeah. And that also goes to some of the feature enhancements that Pendo is with the email and all these other things that are coming out, right? Like being able to like actually reach out and talk to that customer and have an understanding from the UX and the product team that like it isn't just marketing's job and it isn't just customer success job, but we in the product have to engage with them and figure it out and be able to reach outside of that experience to bring them back into the product.
And to add on to that, right, we want to automate those processes too, right? So right now, marketing might do a drip campaign to say like, here's kind of where you should things that you should know at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. We can look at things like, this customer hasn't logged in 14 days. Maybe they should get a special crafted message to try to bring them back. If that doesn't work, maybe we do email. If that doesn't work, maybe it's a phone call, right? Depending on the level of the customer. But having the ability to kind of have that orchestration and Pendo at the heart of that is important to us. We're still getting there. We're transitioning to some tools that will allow us to do that, and having kind of things that tie different tools together, like Gmail and others, to be able to kind of go and craft those campaigns so that you're not only doing kind of an automated onboarding, you're doing automated retention as well.
Yep. Cool. Other questions?
Yeah, how did you get the Pendo dashboards into Salesforce?
Oh well, that's our long-term hope. We're working on it. We do have a Salesforce integration with one of our products, and we want to visualize it in some meaningful way. Part of the things is, how do we work with customer success? Like, what's important for them when they call the person on the phone? Maybe it's just like, what's the key feature they're using? Like when we're starting, and actually Parker Corwin, our head of customer success, is at that event, at the event here to kind of, he's like, hey, I want to learn more about what I would want out of it to make renewals and call downs better. So yeah.
Yeah, basically, I mean, we are making use of the APIs for Domo and for Salesforce. I know Salesforce has a bi-directional. I think we're only using Domo in one way right now, but our expectation is that that's going to grow across time, right? So there might be tools that you use, or plugins, or other ways that you can get data that's critical to you in Pendo, and share it to folks outside of the Pendo world.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the key drivers for us as a high-value contributor to data about our customers to the organization, that when they were looking at getting Salesforce, we're like, we want to move everything to Salesforce because we want to get all of our data there and do this, and customer support is already on it, so it was great to be able to give them what we could do in the future. Yep.
All right.
Cool. Any other questions? Well, thank you for having us. It's awesome.
Thanks, everyone.